Howdy folks. So today I'm going to talk to you about my personal experiences with my tonsillectomy and sinus, for lack of a better term, reconstruction. So they did a few things in my sinuses, they rebuilt a few things, they rooted out my sinus drains. There were a few things that they did. So having said that, my discussion today is going to be focused on my experience with this process, having it done as an adult. I'm going to go through kind of like the preparation, how I prepared for it, what kind of things I bought to make sure that I had everything I needed, or so I thought, and the process of recovering. So just so you guys are aware, my last follow-up to my surgery was yesterday. It went very well, but there's still a couple things that kind of time will tell on what happens. So let's get started. Like I said, this may or may not be your experience. Some of the things I'm talking about are because other people that had similar surgeries, or the same they had tonsillectomies, or they had sinus surgery. These are the things that they experienced in their surgery, and I heard these things repeatedly, so I thought I'll put them in a video. That way, if someone stumbles upon this before their own surgery, they can feel prepared. All right. There we go. Now, if you want to see more stuff like this, like my experience in this type situation, please comment that below. Like I could talk about my experience working in with hospice, both inpatient and outpatient, having to deal with managing that process for a loved one. There's a lot of things I could do. So if you want me to do that, comment below. Also, if you like this video and you thought it had valuable content, please like this video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you can stay in the loop for future content. Okay, so let's get started. Tonsillectomy. Why would you do that as an adult? Everyone says that's going to be really painful. You don't want to do that. Well, I agree with that. If you don't have to do it, don't do it. So some of the reasons that I went ahead and did this as an adult is because I was getting repeated infections. So strep throat is one of those where if you get strep multiple times a year, like averaging 5 or more, in addition to that, sinus infections and major headache issues, stuff like that. So I had all this stuff going on where I was getting repeated infections. It was affecting my ability to go to work. It was very painful. And when I get strep, it's a little bit different for me because I get very high fevers with strep, and that's potentially really dangerous for your organs. So as an adult experiencing 104, 105 fevers, that's not a great thing. So I have to go through alternative treatments when I get strep. Hopefully that's not gonna be a problem anymore. Actually, so that's just to say that's the reason behind why I did it. At the end, I'll kind of talk about what I think about getting this surgery as an adult, the time to do it and when not to do it, etc. But again, these are just my experiences and my opinions, okay? So don't take this as fact, don't take this as I'm an expert. Just understand that it's something I've been through, and so these are the things that I took from that. Okay, so before your surgery, make sure that you have a strong support system set up. So if you are in a relationship, make sure the person you're in a relationship with knows that you're going to need their help, most likely for 2 weeks straight. I would say plan to be off of work for 2 weeks. And then if you feel better before that, you can go back early. But it's going to be much harder to explain that you're still not well at the end of the 2 weeks. I ended up taking 2 weeks, and I'm so glad that I did, because if I hadn't, I really wouldn't, I wouldn't have been okay. Because they said, oh, you can take a week or a week and a half, 7 to 10 days, and you should be okay. I was not okay in terms of pain. In terms of healing, I was okay. In terms of healing, I was great. In terms of pain management, not good. So take full 2 weeks, and then if you need less time, then you can take less time, okay? So Make sure that the night before you eat whatever it is that your little heart desires, that you find to be the most desirable thing right now. I went ahead and had steak, and it was delicious. And I think I haven't really had steak since then, but not because I can't. I totally can now. All right, so eat whatever you want, but once midnight hits, you're cut off, not even water. So really watch that timer. Make sure your support system knows you're not supposed to have any food or drink at all before surgery, or they will not do it. It's a big waste of your time. So make sure that's the case, and that's pretty standard for surgeries. I have a little list down here, that's why I keep looking down. Okay, let's see. Oh, and when you're sitting there, like, make sure your support system goes with you. I had multiple people. My husband was there, Paul was there, my sister was there, my dad came for the surgery. There was a lot of people there to be supportive. Paul's mom was there. It was really nice. Afterward, I had several people set up so that if I was just too out of it and someone had to stay with me, we still had people that could bring things to me that I might need that I hadn't foreseen. Having said that, we went grocery shopping ahead of time. I got things like mac and cheese and stock, like beef stock or chicken stock, like, broth type things, cream of wheat, Jell-O, pudding, applesauce, mashed potatoes, and then I got a bunch of soups. I got a whole bunch of soups, like tomato soup and butternut squash soup and pumpkin soup, and those were mistakes. We'll get there in a second. So I got all these things to prepare, and the vast majority of those things were unusable. Okay, so prepare by shopping. We're gonna go through things that worked for me, and then you can kind of expand upon that as you see fit. When you're sitting there waiting, a little bit before the surgery, they bring in like a nasal spray, and they have you do a nasal spray a few times, and then you have to wait 5 minutes and do it again, and wait 5 minutes and do it again. So you do it, I think, 3 times before you go in. You go in, you get knocked out, you get the surgery, and then you wake up. Okay, we're talking post-surgery now. This is after the surgery. How do you feel? You're really loopy. It already kind of hurts, to be honest. I didn't feel that great to begin with, which was an indicator of how terrible it was going to be. I suffer from chronic pain, degenerative illness, that kind of thing. And so I thought to myself, like, yeah, everybody says it's terrible, but I bet it's going to be like manageable. And the reason I say that is because I tend to not tolerate painkillers, narcotic painkillers, very well. I have some side effects to them, so I have a very hard time tolerating them, and I avoid them. In this case, I just dealt with the side effects. It was worth it to deal with the side effects so that I could have it take the edge off. I'm not talking about feeling loopy. I'm not talking about it being pain-free. I'm talking about taking narcotic painkillers to make this bearable. Okay? So that's kind of an indicator of what that's like. Post-surgery, I woke up and I had a gauze taped under my nose because I had sinus surgery as well. The bleeding with that was far worse than any bleeding I experienced with my tonsils. That first night and into the next day, I ended up having to change my gauze several times, and it was just bleeding and bleeding. After it stopped bleeding, the next night was when I started doing nasal rinses. And you're gonna have to do those 4 to 5 times a day until they tell you that you don't have to do them 4 to 5 times a day again. So make sure you get plenty of distilled water. Make sure you get the sinus rinse stuff, the saline packets to go with the rinse. Get the bottle, not the neti pot. Get the bottle, the squeeze bottle one. You can get it at any drugstore that I'm aware of. I think you can probably even get it at Walmart. But you want to have that on hand, ready to go. Have 2 things of distilled water, 2 big gallon jugs of distilled water. That's what you need, so that you can do that adequately. You cannot use straws. Plan to not use straws for at least a week, if not 2 weeks. You want to ask about these things when you're approved to be able to use straws again. You also want to avoid citrus. It will burn. It's not good. So avoid citrus, so oranges, lemons, limes, grapefruit, all of that stuff, avoid it. Avoid foods that are red or orange, kind of like tomato soup or pumpkin soup or butternut squash soup. So those soups that I bought that were like in sipping cups and things like that, they were totally not useful. I think they might even still be in my pantry. Not that I wouldn't eat them, they sound delicious, but right now I don't want to have soup because I can eat real food again. So avoid red and orange foods. The reason being, if your throat does start to bleed and you've been eating red or orange foods, you may not realize it. Or you may think that you're bleeding and you're not, and it just makes things more difficult. Now, I'm more than a month, no, I'm 6 weeks out, and I still have issues if I talk too much. I still feel like thickness in my throat. We'll get there. Okay, another thing that you need to avoid is dairy. So everybody says eat tons of ice cream. You get to eat all this ice cream. You don't get to eat all this ice cream. That's just not reality. So you also want to avoid things that are very, very cold and things that are very, very hot. You generally want to stick with things that are room temperature or slightly cooler. And then slightly warmer. So the thing that got me through 2 weeks of not eating was I had water, room temperature water, I had lukewarm tea, and then I also had Sonic ice from the Sonic fast food place. You can buy it in a big bag. If you have a McAllister's, they also have the same ice. But Sonic actually sells it by the bag. And that's really good stuff to have because they're tiny little ice cubes and they're crunchy. So you can put them in your mouth and suck on them, or you can chew them up so you feel like you're eating something, which is so valuable while you're doing this, to feel like you get to eat something even though you don't get to eat something. And then I started having like things like Jell-O because you could swallow it whole. The reason I say that is because you start having this kind of fear that, and rightfully so, because it happened to me, that things are going to get stuck where your tonsils were, because they might, and that happened to me. So just be aware of that. So you want to eat things like Jell-O, things that are smooth, where then you can drink your drink not using a straw, and you can get some nourishment. Having said that, I can confidently tell you I might have had 2 meals in 2 weeks. And then my very first real meal was ramen. I had ramen. And it wasn't ramen at home, it was ramen when I went to visit my best friend, because I was like, I'm hungry, I need to eat something, I don't know what to eat. So we went and had ramen, and that was my first experience having ramen to begin with. They made me a special ramen that was just broth and noodles, and they threw some chicken in there that was very lightly grilled. And I was able to kind of chew that up until it became a paste and swallow it whole. But that was my first meal, and it was so wonderful and tasty, and I waited for the broth to get so it wasn't so hot, and then it was very soothing on my throat. Okay, so as far as post-surgical, make sure that you stay on a schedule. Like literally have someone set a timer for the next time you're supposed to take your medication, your pain pills, whatever it is, sometimes an antibiotic. So make sure you have someone that's actually in charge of that. All right, where are we at here? Ooh, your throat's gonna look nasty, okay? You're gonna have white patches back there. Those are essentially the scabs. So that's not unusual. They'll last quite a while. You'll have a lot of swelling back there. It'll be very difficult to do things like talking, yawning. Just plan on sleeping a lot. Just plan on sleeping a lot. Plan on taking your medication as often as you need it for pain. Let's see. So the things that saved me were Sonic Ice, lukewarm tea, broth was a good one too. So that ended up giving me some kind of caloric intake, was broth. And eventually cream of wheat. I didn't really eat anything. I lost 12 pounds in 2 weeks. So that was fun. I really didn't mind because I'm a little bit overweight, so it wasn't a big deal. But honestly, if you are not, if you don't have the weight to spare, really be aware of that. Let's see. Some post-surgical visits. So when you get into your post-surgical visit, I could talk. Maybe getting my tonsils out ruined my ability to talk. I'm kidding. It doesn't do that. It helps, actually. They spray in your nose with a numbing agent, and then that spray like seeps back down post-nasally, and then you can taste it, and it's really nasty. Like really nasty. Just be aware of that. Bring a bottle of water with you so that after your visit you can just like chug it and get that taste out of your mouth. Then they come in with like a long metal kind of camera thing that has suction on the end, and they stick it all the way up here, and they end up, it feels like they're sticking it into your brain. I'm not kidding, it just feels. Just be prepared for that. Make sure you, like, if you need to hold on to something to stay still, you don't want to move when they have that thing up your nose, but they'll suck out whatever they need to suck out that needs to come out, like excess mucus, stuff like that, that's not coming out with the nasal rinse. Having said that, my experience with the nasal rinses was I did the nasal rinse as often as I was supposed to, and I had to like lean forward and lean back a few times after doing the nasal rinse so that any residual that had got like stuck in a sinus cavity would come out. Otherwise, when I'm like doing nothing or I'm sitting up from the couch from a reclined position, I would just have leakage coming all the time. So make sure you like go forward and back, side to side, so anything that's stuck in a cavity will come out and you won't have random leakage happening. So do that. Okay. At the end of the day, if you don't have to do this, don't do it. That's my advice. I really needed it. I have had some benefits from having it done. One, I haven't been sick since then, so that's good. 6 weeks of no sickness is actually kind of a long time for me. It has affected my taste though, so things like dairy products, chocolate, things like that kind of have a sour aftertaste now where they didn't before. That can happen. I don't think it's frequent. I don't think it's a frequent thing. I think I'm a freak and that happened to me. It could be temporary. I'm only 6 weeks out. So in 6 more weeks, that may be totally gone. So be aware of that. Also with my singing, I am able to sustain notes for a longer period of time because I can breathe better, I can regulate air better, and I can sing a lower register now. My high notes are the same as they always were, but my low notes, I can hit lower notes now than I could before. I've noticed a subtle change in my speech, and I don't like it because I find myself feeling like I'm speaking very nasal. I don't like that. I want to have clear speech. I want it to be intentionally like non-regional almost. And with this kind of nasal speech pattern I've developed, it's difficult. The doctor said it's going to take time to retrain my palate. And the best way to retrain my palate is to continue singing and to do it often. So there's that. Let's see. Oh, I don't snore anymore. So that's good news. No snoring. My singing is better, and the other issues will probably resolve. So that's good. If you are a parent and you have a small child, like let's say 8 or younger, that's just my guesstimation, okay? Young, where they would eventually not remember this very well, and you go to the NT because they get sick a lot, and they say you should consider having their tonsils out. Please don't put it off. I think it's a very good parenting practice to go ahead and get this done for them when they're younger, if you possibly can. If you can get it done while they're young, it'll be easy to recover. It'll be difficult for you as the parent because you'll see them in pain, but they won't remember this pain as much as they would if they had to get it done as an adult. So if they need to, go ahead and do it. And technically what I had out was my tonsils and my adenoids. They were both out, and then they did the sinus surgery as well. You could have the sinus surgery done separately at a later date if you need to. I just decided to lump it all together because then it's just one surgery. And the sinus surgery was a lot less invasive, a lot less difficult recovery. That's something that would be very easy to recover from at a later date when they're older. But the tonsillectomy, that one's really hard. So I think I've talked about everything. I'm very thankful for my support system. I'm very thankful for Paul. I'm very thankful for my sister. Paul's mom came and brought me a smoothie. That was really nice. It was hard because I wanted the smoothie a lot and it tasted delicious, but the combination of one had dairy and one ended up having some kind of citrus in it, so it was very difficult for me to finish them, but I was able to get some nourishment out of it. Paul's sister brought us Sonic Ice. Wendy, you're a godsend. That was the best thing, was that. Also having herbal tea was very nice, but I would have to make the tea and then wait for the tea to get a temperature that I could tolerate. Well, that's it. That's my video about my surgery. If you have any questions or if you have any experiences that are similar to this and you want to share those, please feel free to comment below. If you have any additional tips for people going to get this surgery, please comment them below so it's something that they can consider. Like I said, I'm not an expert. These are just my experiences, but hopefully if this is something you have to do, knowing these things may help you, and I hope that they do. But otherwise, I hope that you're happy and healthy and that you have a great week, and I'll see you in a few days. Bye, guys.